What's up, YouTube? This is iOS Expert, and you're probably wondering why I have 4 different iPhones for this video. Well, it's coming to my attention that Apple Maps is a form of planned obsolescence. As you can see, this is my iPhone 4, or 3G on iOS 4, sorry. It's my iPhone 3G running iOS 4.1. As you can see, Google Maps works perfectly fine on here. Like, there's lots of things you can do with it. Yeah. And then, same thing with my iOS 5 iPhone 4. You can see iOS 5 iPhone 4, there's Google Maps running on both of iPhone 4 and iOS 5 and the iPhone 3G, which is stuck on iOS 4. However, once you work your way up to iOS 6, this is 6.0, you can see that there's no picture, there's no image, there's no Google Maps, there's no Apple Maps, and iOS 6, the first one to introduce Apple Maps, and basically the application is broken. There's no working Apple Maps or Google Apple Maps doesn't work on these devices. On this iOS 7 iPhone 4, he thought it was sad to see iOS 6 Maps app go. Well, look, check out iOS 7. It doesn't work either. This is 7.0.4 on an 8GB white iPhone 4. Yeah, so you can see, it's coming to my attention that this is a form of planned obsolescence, because you could see it works perfectly. Right there, it works perfectly fine on this 3G running 4.1. It works. Google Maps works. On this iOS 5 iPhone 4, Google Maps works. On this iOS 6.0 iPhone 4, Apple Maps does not work. And on iOS 7, Apple Maps does not work, just like on iOS 6. So, and that just goes to show that. So this is coming to my attention that this is a form of planned obsolescence, not because Apple wanted their own maps integration, it's because it's a form of planned obsolescence. Like, this phone is pretty old, this phone is very old, and then this phone is like the same age as this one hardware-wise, but the software is an iOS version newer, but doesn't work on this one either, which is the same model as the iPhone 4, but nothing loads on a much newer version of iOS. This is iOS 7.0.4. You can see, you'll be able to tell because of the power off menu that this isn't 7.1.2, it is 7.0.4, and yeah, basically, you can't use Apple Maps on these old iPhones, but as you can see, you can use Google Maps. So I'm sure, like, this is coming to my attention that this is a planned obsolescence strategy that Apple has been taking down since iOS 6, because these ones work fine. So how do you make these older versions of iOS usable? Well, there's one thing you can do. There's the YouTube app, on iOS 7. You can get the original YouTube app 1.0. I'll make a video on that later, because I don't have, I do have other devices, obviously, but they're, the app devices that have, you basically have to go through, like, you have to do app admin, you have to paste it into the iOS from the file system. You have to paste from the file system, or you don't add anything on the file system, but you copy something from the file system that encodes YouTube 1.0. You install app admin. You have to go to the App Store on that iOS 8, 9, or 10 device. You have to hold down the update button, and then you'll go to and then you'll paste what you got from the file system of YouTube 1.0, and then you would paste that in. You'd hit OK, and it downloads that version. You go into the computer and you go into the computer and you would essentially, it would go into the computer, and then you would, like, install, you would, like, use, like, iMazing or some other type of software that allows you to download apps from the device, and then you would go to the quick transfer, or maybe even from the iTunes or Finder or Apple Music app itself, and you would, like, get it, and then it should go pop up on your older device running iOS 7. But, like, iOS 6 and below, you don't have to do that. You do have to download the classic YouTube app, but on iOS 5, you should already have the classic YouTube app installed already, actually. It doesn't seem to work on iOS 4. I mean, it kind of does work on the 3G. No, it doesn't. It kind of does work on iOS 4 on the iPod Touch, 3rd generation, 8GB, but because it's a lot of the 2nd gen's hardware, it will say, like, movie, blah, blah, blah. But if you have an ARM 6 device, it just doesn't work at all. So it doesn't. So you can't exactly fix YouTube on the 3G. But I already have videos that show you how to download iOS 4 applications in iOS 4. Like, I already have videos of that. You can see. You have Angry Birds. Halloween Edition is a big one that you guys liked. Not quite a year ago yet, but this is, like, the Apple Maps, at least, is more usable than it is on these versions, on the white iPhones 6 and 7, or iOS 6 and iOS 7. That's just a lot more usable, don't you think? But YouTube, it doesn't really connect to YouTube very well. I guess iOS 4 just didn't have some of the features that these devices do, but I'm just showing you that planned maps, Apple Maps, is a form of planned obsolescence, because, yeah. So how do you make iOS 5 and iOS 6 more usable? Basically, you want to add cydia.bag-xml, you want to add the Skyglow repo as well, cydia.skyglow.eus, cydia.skyglow.es, then cydia.bag.xml. These are the same repos, but depending on your device and some of the different tweaks, just add both the repos. Because that's what you want to do if you want to get the most functionality out of iOS 5 and iOS 6. Just add both of those repos, and you'll have to add another repo. yzu.mo/dev. You want to use repo.threus.com. That's for a specific tweak that disables not certificate verification. That's what I thought it was when I was like 17, 18. You're disabling certificate validation is the correct thing for it. There's a specific tweak there they want to get on iOS 5 and probably 6.0 as well. If you're dealing with older versions of iOS, like probably iOS 6.0, or iOS 5 or iOS 4, there's a different method to get SSL kill switch in iOS 4, which I'm not going to go over in this video, because it's already been 9 minutes in, and yeah, I want to keep that nice and short for you guys. The other thing is yzu.mo/dev, so you want to add those 4 repos, and then depending on that, you want to get cydia.iPhoneCake.com, depending on how AppSync needs to be installed on the iOS version. Again, add that repo. If you don't like, if you only have to add one of them, if you only have to add a few of those repos, then yeah, then just do it. On iOS 6, you have to add one more repo, and that is, on iOS 6, you want to add one more repo, and that is cydia.invokeseplaygames.uk/beta. This is not a beta tweak. I would never make someone install a beta tweak. It's just the repo. But yeah, you want to install the classic YouTube app. But yeah, you just want to install a classic YouTube app. It's the same thing as an iOS 5. You see this exact same app as you would have on iOS 5, basically. It's not really, like, it doesn't say classic YouTube app beta. I mean, they do, a lot of these tweaks do say beta, but I've seen other YouTuber sources that say it works, so. So, you have that. You want to install, it returns a classic YouTube app to iOS 6. And this is the beta tweak. And the beta that I was talking about is tube repair. Now, even though this is a beta, it doesn't break your device. Like, I've tried it on my iPhone 3GS. I've tried it on. It's just the reason that probably doesn't work on iOS 4 or 64-bit devices is because it is a beta. That's why you can't really use it on iOS 12, for example. And you can't use it on iOS 4 either, but you can use it on iOS 7. You just need the app, the original YouTube app. As you can see here, this doesn't really come up on iOS 5. You want the Skyglow repo. And you'll find tube repair. It says this right here. As you can see, it says that there's no known bugs. And it says, basically, you'll see that it adds support to iOS 4. to iOS 10 and system YouTube apps. With both the App Store and the system YouTube apps, so those old versions will work, as it says right there, but it doesn't work on the iPhone 5S or iPhone 6, whatever ran iOS 7, iOS 12, and it's 64-bit. It doesn't work for those devices, it tells you here. And it also doesn't work on ARM6 devices. So that means the iPod Touch 2nd generation iPhone 3G probably won't work at all. And then the iPod Touch 3rd generation 8GB will kind of work because it's got the external appearance of the 3rd generation, but it has a lot of the ARM6 hardware inside the motherboard. That's how a 3rd generation 8GB is kind of created. And so it'll kind of work on that device, but it's effectively a 2nd gen. It just has some ARM7 capabilities that allows like YouTube to kind of work on it. People were really confused about that back in 2009. Thought it wasn't the same as a 3rd gen 32GB, but it's not. It's actually, if anything, it's more similar to the 2nd gen. The only difference is that 8GB 3rd gen has ARM7 capabilities that kind of work, but it's mostly ARM6, and it causes, and yeah, it breaks YouTube if you try to fix it on the iPod Touch 3rd generation 8GB. It loads something, but it doesn't allow the video to play. Anyways, the newer devices, ARM7, older device in 64-bit, should work. This is iPhone 4. As you can see, YouTube works. You see YouTube works. I'm not going to play video because I'm a little bit afraid that's copyright. See, that even works. Now if we scroll down to this YouTube app, I almost hit Minecraft if you saw there. Yeah, so YouTube is completely fixed. It changes something that makes YouTube work. So beyond that, you can't really fix the App Store, so you will have to use a computer. Yeah, you'll have to use a computer to make YouTube work. even though it shows that the App Store works, when you try to like click on, if you try to, so it shows that the App Store works, but this is a cosmetic fix. If I click on updates and the purchased, it will say like sign in and cannot connect to App Store and all this kind of different stuff. It's basically a cosmetic fix that used to work on 6.1, that used to make apps download on 6.1, but now it's just a cosmetic fix, and you can't get the apps. The Veteris doesn't work either if you show here. So there's no Veteris functionality out of iOS 5, 6, or 7. Same thing on iOS 7 here. And for those people that argue, it doesn't work for me, and it's because, and for those people that argue in my comments that say, it doesn't work for me, and they'll be like, yeah, it's only on iOS 5 and iOS 6, that's what he said, that's why it doesn't work. Well, it's going to be the same thing on iOS 7, for those of you concerned about that. It doesn't work on iOS 7 if you're concerned about that, so I got this iPhone 4 just to help you guys with this. Or not just to help you guys with this. I have my apps here that I want, but... And I do like the original shutdown menu that this iOS had. I shouldn't say that's the only reason, actually. It's definitely not true, because I do care about this iPhone. It's just that. Because I have this iOS 7 iPhone 4... I'll utilize it to help you guys if that's your thing. So it yells at you even more. I also only have 10% battery in this iOS 5 iPhone, so let's just get out of that. Either way, Veteris doesn't work. So you can see here, nothing really happens. So yeah, for those that for those that say it only works on 5 and 6, it does. The YouTube app works on iOS 7, but the App Store doesn't work on 5, 6, or 7. So 5, 6, or 7, iOS 5, iOS 6, and iOS 7 are now effectively the same, with the App Store cosmetically getting fixed, YouTube app being fixable, and then Veteris is not working. So for those of you arguing in my comments section saying that he said it only works on iOS 5 and iOS 6, but you want to fix an iOS 7. No, it doesn't work on any of them, but YouTube works on all of them. And that's another thing, too. But then, when you look back into something like this, just so I don't show you my iPhone 3G's passcode, that's a security risk. You'll see that it's actually the older ones work. The older ones work. But the newer ones do not. There was a tweak called Maps X, and it would fix it on like iOS 6 when iOS 7 was working, but then they cut it on iOS 7 and it doesn't work anymore. And so yeah, it broke. It broke the Maps app on both iOS 6 and iOS 7, and now it's the same thing with the App Store, effectively making iOS 5, iOS 6, and iOS 7 exactly the same, so you don't need to argue about that in my comments anymore. But on the iPhone 3G, it's a whole other thing to use, but the App Store, or not the App Store, the Maps app works by default if you have an iOS 4 iPhone. Same goes with iOS 5, so... And AppSync is how you get apps on iOS 4, if you're wondering. Which you can also use on 5, 6, and 7. And what you need, and you technically need to now, but it's a different method depending on, like, if you have iOS 4, an early version of iOS 5, you have to use a different source compared to 5.1.1 and iOS 6 to iOS 7. They're completely different processes, so do expect many more videos to come showing you how to do that. So thank you for watching, and peace out.